Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday, and this Q&A Tuesday is going to start off with something a little bit different after the intro. Okay, so how is this going to start off a little bit different? It's not going to start with questions. It's going to start with me addressing a few elephants in the room.
You can guarantee I'm going to put a cap in your ass.
Can we not turn me into Joe Exotic? Thank you very much. First thing to discuss, first elephant in the room is going to be obviously my hair, right? I haven't seen a barber in close to 2 months now, and I think pretty soon I'm going to be able to have a man bun in. Could you please? Yeah, that's definitely not a good look on me. Can you? Yeah, never mind on that. But all jokes aside, number one is going to be the commercials. And boy, did I catch a lot of heat from you guys, but I'm glad that I did. If you notice, I put the commercials out for you guys to see and to give me your honest feedback, and boy, were you guys honest. Check this out. I love your channel, but all these commercials look very unprofessional. Sorry, Roman, but they're all pretty terrible, completely opposite to the message you wanted to portray. The first one was particularly awful. Oh, I thought these were genuinely an April Fool's joke. You're much better than these. They look like fake training videos, and what you don't want to do, just be yourself. Roman, love your watch videos, but not the promotional videos. They look like cheap 1960s TV ads. Roman, sorry this isn't going to work for you, but it did work for the episode. To be totally honest and objective, they really suck. That's pretty honest right there. Right there. Not ready for prime time, not even close. Hope you didn't spend much. Don't do it. Bro, these are horrible. I was hoping it was a joke. Keep up the great videos. Much success. Was this on the delayed April Fool's joke? I'm sorry to ask, but they were all pretty bad. And so on and so forth. There were some positive comments. Not all was negative. It was about, I guess, 75% bad, 25% good. The only thing I'm going to say about that is thank you. I know it seems pretty odd that I'm thanking you guys for all these seemingly terrible comments. This is why I'm happy to have you guys as my family. I always tell it like it is, and I expect you to do the same. If I fuck up somewhere, I want to hear your feedback, and I want to hear what you have to say. Based on all your bad comments and recommendations, the biggest thing we took out of that is the fact that, yes, we try to get a comical-like setting for these commercials, sort of going after, let's say, the Dollar Shave Club commercial type of deal. Something that's funny, that's witty, that gives you the brand name recognition. But one thing we missed, and we all agreed internally, and you guys all agreed in your comments, is the fact that the message was missed. We don't want to scrap these commercials because we did spend quite a bit of money on them and time as well, but we're going to rework them in a way where the message is still there, that there are at least certain cuts of at least showing the website, showing the product, so that people can actually tie the comedy to the actual product that we sell and represent. And we're going to do like a test run on them, run them out in the social media space, see how well they do. But what this also did for us, I literally have a folder that I'm looking at with all the bad comments and suggestions, as well as the good comments and suggestions. We're going to put them all together, sit down with the marketing team, rework it, and guess what I'm going to do? Once we come up with the new ones, I will once again put them out. I will once again get you guys' opinion, and hopefully we'll do a better job next time. The next elephant in the room was the last market update video that I did with Adrienne. It was an hour-long video, and 27,000 of you guys actually watched that video. And there, I got a lot of positive notes. I shouldn't say some stuff was mostly negative, but there were some comments there that people felt as if I downplayed the coronavirus. People thought I was delusional in regards to what I talked about the market, where the market is going to be, and that people are actually out there buying. I'm going to use one example of an email I received from an individual, one of my viewers. Of course, I'm not going to call this guy out by name because this is not what I do. And the purpose of this address was not to call anybody out or to even rebuttal anyone. I'm going to read verbatim what this guy said, well, most of it anyway. Roman, I must say I'm disappointed in you. Although it's important to stay optimistic, it is equally as important to be realistic. That being said, I think you're either delusional or just faking it completely. Do you honestly think people are going to buy luxury watches of any kind? People in America don't have what to eat, and you're saying you happy this happened. Good luck putting on a smile, but you don't fool me for 1 second. Maybe your Pateks will be worth 75,000 rubles instead of $75,000. Pretty negative, right? I mean, some of you may label this gentleman as a hater, but at the end of the day, this was his opinion. But it was also a misunderstanding of the message I was trying to portray. My response to him was the following. I think you may have misunderstood me giving an opinion on the COVID situation versus current state of the watch market. Remember, I'm simply talking about what's going on today or the day of that video, right? And today people are indeed looking for opportunities in pretty much any market, be it the stock market, arts and antiquities, watches, diamonds, exotic cars, whatever they may deem as an investment or as something they may get a lot cheaper at this very moment, right? And again, many ways to interpret what I said. I'm not happy about the virus at all, obviously. I was once again speaking from the business perspective strictly. This is a watch channel. I'm telling you what's going on with the industry, right? The fact remains that our watch sales, retail that is, are actually up versus 3 months ago. And fly-by watch operations are indeed being weeded out. This is what I said I was happy about, where the business is going to stabilize. And it's not just in my benefit, it's also in your benefit. That means the prices will stabilize. All that hype stuff that was climbing through the roof due to many factors, one of them being included that you have these fly-by operations flipping stuff to each other, that's going to stop. That's what I was happy about. To say that I'm happy about the COVID situation is a complete misunderstanding, okay? I'm not happy about the COVID situation. I'm not happy about a lot of things that the COVID situation has brought. And I further wrote to him, what I did not talk about in the video is that my company is operating at a loss for now, due to the fact that our wholesale business, which makes up about 75% of our revenue, is dead overnight. It stopped, right? Especially on the jewelry end. Stores are closed. There are no trade shows, so therefore my wholesale operation kind of stopped, right? And I didn't mention this because I wanted to give positive news only, but because the topic of the video was the retail watch market. And why am I operating at a loss? I can actually stay profitable by letting go 70% of my employees here. But I would rather take the bullet for a bit and make sure that those that work for me don't have to go on unemployment and lose mainly their health benefits and their insurance benefits, which I'm continually paying. This is what I wrote to this guy. And further, I did not talk about the charity work that I did. As we all know, New York was hit the hardest, and one of the weekends, myself, my wife, and 3 of my children sat and literally made up envelopes, put cash in them, and send them out to those in need, those that perhaps couldn't afford to put a meal on a table, right? I don't talk about these things. I don't talk about charity. You don't talk about charity. This isn't something that I do on my own. I'm not trying to portray myself as some kind of a great guy, right? Which is why I didn't talk about this in the channel. And I'm really not happy about talking it now either, but I felt like since I wrote this to the guy, I might as well mention it. And basically, I ended this conversation with saying, don't be so quick to judge. Leave that to God. What I have is what a lot of people sometimes lose sight of, and that is faith. This is what makes me stay positive during times like this. And I know that God willing, all will be fine. And as my channel and videos is just about watches and nothing more, it has nothing to do with COVID. You never see me talk any politics. You never see me put forth opinions on things that are not related to watches or the watch industry or the jewelry industry. Whether you reach out to a priest, a rabbi, or an imam, whatever faith you may be, I'm a person who has faith in God, and therefore I am extremely positive based on that feeling, because having faith allows you to stay positive no matter how grim the times may be. But anyway, don't read too deep into my comments. There's no need to interpret what I say. I'm not CNN, right? I tell things how they are, and what I talked about in that video was the fact that this is what's happening in the watch market today, which has changed since then. Right? Since that last video has aired, some things have changed, right? Not by much, believe it or not, but some things have changed. And those of you watching this that have bought watches from me in the last 2 weeks know that you guys are out there looking for an opportunity to buy some things, and you are doing it. All of you also commented positively. There was not a single negative comment when I said, do you want me to do a QVC type of style show so that you guys get first chance on the watches that come in rather than going out the door quicker than the video airs, right? You guys all agree that you want me to do that. That also tells me that, yes, there's people out there looking up for opportunity. Now, are there those out there that are suffering right now? Are there those out there that are actually selling off their expensive toys in order to put money elsewhere because they may have lost their job, their business may have stopped, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely. The same thing happened in '08. I'm not going to cry to you about the fact that I'm going to be operating at a loss over the next 6 months, but I'm doing it for a noble cause, because you know what? When my company was making money, when my company was profitable, and we were doing extremely, extremely well, it was due to the people that are here. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to be the guy to benefit myself over the next 6 months at the cost of the people that got me here over the last 17 years. So I hope this sheds a little bit of light on this COVID situation. Again, this isn't a COVID channel. This is a watch channel. Don't interpret it any other way than what I actually say. The last elephant in the room, and this is going to cover some Q&As because a lot of you guys reached out and you talked about, Roman, what are your thoughts? Rolex, Patek, Tudor, Chanel, who else was there? Chopard leaving Baselworld, right? Not to reiterate what you guys may have already read in a million articles, and now I've already seen a bunch of YouTubers talk about this, and et cetera, et cetera. I will give you my opinion. The consensus is the following. In layman's terms, what I feel the reason that these top brands, specifically Patek, Rolex, and Tudor, not to discount Chanel and Chopard, decided to leave is for a couple of reasons. My opinion is, number one, I think Basel has gotten to be way too expensive, and I think that Watches and Wonders, i.e. SIHH, is a cheaper solution. I think Baselworld as an organization has been around for almost 100 years. I think Patek has been there since like 1939 or something like that, right? They overall have gotten humongous. They've gotten too big, and they've gotten too expensive, and they've gotten too controlling and too demanding, et cetera, et cetera. How is that? Well, if I'm an organization that's been around for 100 years and I am the watch show, kind of don't really have a whole lot of competition except for SIHAs or Watches and Wonders, right? I'm going to dictate however I want things done and how they should be done. I saw an article somewhere that they still didn't give back deposits for the show that was postponed, right, or canceled. To the tune of $20 million or something like that, which isn't right, especially in situations like this where everybody's suffering, including the big watch companies, right? Which to me is a slap in the face, especially to somebody like Patek. But I don't think this was the deciding factor at this very moment. I'm pretty sure Patek and Rolex and those have already thought about leaving them a while ago. I know one of our jewelry wholesale clients, he displays in Basel, right? He's obviously not in the main halls where Patek and Rolex is, for those of you that have been there. He's in hall 4 or something last time I saw them. This is like a remote hall in a different building. I think it's, you got to go across diagonally from the main hall and then kind of go upstairs. It's more of a normal trade show environment like you see in Hong Kong that I show you in my videos. His cost for a booth, about the same size as the Hong Kong booth that we have, is somewhere around $460,000 to display. Compare that to a Hong Kong show, which is probably the biggest trade show of the year that we do in September. The actual booth cost, the actual space that we get, the cost is $25,000. I mean, it's very, very, very expensive, right? And I spoke briefly about this where, you know, to the big boys, this is a marketing expense, right? This is them showing the world new models. This is who we are. And they build these big badass displays that cost them millions of dollars to set up for a week's worth of show. And also consider the fact that a lot of them are doing away with the authorized dealers, right? They're cutting out the middleman, unfortunately, because there's no need for it anymore, right? And they're going the boutique route. So, and traditionally, this was the place where every authorized dealers under the sun came in, placed their orders, looked at new models, and this is where they actually did business, which is where they actually sold stuff to those authorized dealers, right? That business model is slowly going away. I discussed that in one of my last episodes, right? And last but not least, who's hot today? AP, Richard Mille, Rolex, Patek, right? Forget the COVID crisis, right? They're still hot.
So hot right now.
During the COVID crisis, it's not like it caused for the number 1 to fall off to number 2 and all of a sudden number 10 became number 1. That still stands, right? Regardless of where the prices are right now. So if you're Patek and Rolex and Tudor, which is more the same, where do you want to be? You want to be next to the hot boys. You want to be together. You want to be with AP. You want to be with Richard Mille, right? And guess where they are? They're not in Baselworld. I think it was a combination of them sort of being pissed at Baselworld and at the same token taking their operations and moving to Watches and Wonders and being next to all the hot brands. As far as Chopard and Chanel, they followed suit because they felt that was a better move for them because they want to be next to the hot boys. If the biggest crowd is going to be drawn to the hottest models in the market, to the hottest brands in the market, if I'm a brand, that's where I want to be. If I open up romansharf watches tomorrow and have an opportunity to display next to Patek, Richard Mille, Rolex, that's where I want to be, especially if it's going to be cheaper and I'm going to get better terms from the organization that's running the show. And of course, when you add into the mix, you know, 2018 when the Swatch Group pulled out 18 of his brands. When you put that into the mix, everybody's saying, is this the end of Baselworld? It very well may be. But listen, don't think that those 18 brands that Swatch Group pulled out along now with Patek, Chanel, Chopard, and Tudor, if you guys haven't been to Baselworld, there's so many more brands out there that display. I think what this will do is it will give opportunity to brands that stick with Baselworld to get out there and actually be able to promote themselves better and not be in the shadows of the big boys. If brand XYZ used to be on a second floor and they couldn't bring themselves into the main hall first floor, and the best they could get is second floor in the main hall, and now they have an opportunity to be on the first floor, don't get it wrong. There will still be plenty of traffic in Baselworld. You know, maybe they'll put the independents on the first floor. You know, that would be a hella help to those if they can afford it, again, depending on what they charge. Is it the end of Baselworld? No, I don't see the show dying anytime soon, because outside the brands I just mentioned and those that pulled out in 18, there's still hundreds of other people that want to display at Baselworld, and they will continue displaying in Baselworld. This show has been around for almost 100 years. It's not going anywhere. It is unfortunate. I wish that it was all one show, right? You didn't have those two separate shows for logistic reasons, really, because they're separated by dates. For what it's worth, this was my take on these guys leaving Baselworld and Baselworld in general. Hope that addresses us somewhat. I took the majority of this episode up for that, but I will get to some questions because, again, I have a humongous backlog of questions right now in my inbox. So let's go to one from a gentleman by the name of Dave. He's actually local. He lives in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He's been collecting watches along with his father for the last 10 years. He says, we both watch your YouTube videos, a huge supporters. We are often telling all of our watch circle friends to tune in as well. And I thank you for that. As I say at the end of every video, it's when you guys share my content, this is what helps my channel grow organically. And this is the only way I want to grow it. If you ever find yourself in northeastern tier of the state, love to bring you out to the golf course. Dave, I am not a golfer.
Obviously, you're not a golfer.
My closest encounter with golf was I went to a driving range one time. They asked me if I want a small, medium, or large bucket. Obviously, I said I want a large bucket. I went out there, I swung about 15 times, and then I realized that golf is a very physical sport. Needless to say, I didn't get through that bucket, but I am not a golfer. Although it's cool to hang out on the golf course and have a few beers and at least give it a shot. But anyway, his question was the following. Do you think now that Rolex, amongst others, have identified shutdown production plants due to COVID-19, that timepieces in particular Rolexes that are 2020 models will increase in demand and price due to limited production of 2020 models? I do realize, obviously, that due to Rolex's random serial numbers, deciphering the production year of certain models may affect this theory. However, my thinking is that perhaps warranty cars dated 2020 may one day be at a premium due to the sheer fact that there will be less of them on the market. Would love to get your thoughts on this subject. This is a great question because it goes back to what I talked about, collectability of Rolexes, right? And I always talked about having like the first Rolex or the last production year Rolex because they made less of them, and pretty much any Rolex that's out there, let's say they had a small dial change or the Rolex that was made out of surgical steel for a short amount of time. Nobody knows how many they made, but we do know they made a lot less of them. There will be a lot less of them out there, right, in better conditions, complete, et cetera, makes them more collectible, right, not investments. And this is what you're referring to, but I think you kind of answer your questions, again, random serial numbers, right? You can tell by the serial number what year the watch was produced. You can reach out to Rolex and ask that, give them a serial number, say, hey, when was my watch produced? Papers are a little bit iffy because here's the thing, you can have a watch that was produced in 2018, a dealer had it in a showcase, didn't sell it, and he dates the card at the time of sale, right? So there's really no collectible watches that are identified by the papers. You have certain serial letters, right, that are out there that prefer this particular years, but the papers may be dated 2-3 years later because that's when they were sold, right? So forget the papers aspect of it. I mean, theoretically, based on what you're saying, yeah, those produced in 2020 will have a lot lower production numbers. Technically, there will be less of them made in 2020, but it all depends on the watch. Plus, don't forget, Rolex may not be putting them out, but Rolex has cases, dials, movements, et cetera, et cetera. They may very well put them together in 2021, but they'll still be considered part of the 2020 production. So unfortunately, I don't think this is something that is going to increase in collectability just because it was made in 2020, even though they may make a lot less pieces. Unless it's a particular watch that gets discontinued the following year, and then you know that this was the very last year, and they only made it for a short amount of time in 2020 due to the plant shutting down. Kind of like the P serial Daytonas first quarter of year 2001. Why those Daytonas so collectors? Because they're the true last dine at Daytonas. A serial they made throughout the entire year. That's the last official year of production, but then first quarter of P, which is 2001, you know, unless something like this happens in 2020, perhaps then, yes. Hope that sheds a little bit of light into that question. And next I have Joe from the UK. Hey, Roman, love the show. Do another collab with Paul Thorpe again soon. Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, I was so looking forward to getting out to UK, meeting a lot of you guys. I have a lot of fans in UK. Would have loved to have met you all guys. But again, it's not canceled, it's postponed. So Paul will have that show. Show will go on at another date. Hopefully, it will not interfere with my travel schedule for other trade shows that we attend, and I'll make it out there to meet all of you guys. Can you give me a view of what's happening at UK at least? A large AD is offering a lot of very popular Rolex watches to the public over the phone, asking 100% deposit or just payment in full for a particular watch to be picked up from the store when the lockdown ends. What is your view on this? Should people avoid this method of purchase? Are customers protected? Should the company go bust? Is this possible because the AD had stockpiled the watches for a rainy day? I think they do have the stock in hand, but would like to hear your views on this. Many thanks, Joe from London. I replied to Joe, I asked him who the authorized dealer was. I know who that dealer is. He's an honorable person. I've known the guy for over 10 years. I think he's hedging his risk at this point. Listen, remember, I talked about having a positive view on the market. There's different opinions out there. Just because I think everything is going to be fine come September doesn't mean that that's going to happen, right? There's others that think it's going to get worse and they're going to be suffering for the next 10 years. I mean, exaggerating it a little bit, obviously. But if you have the product and you're an AD and you're sitting on this hot product, you've kind of been holding back, and not that you've been holding it back, you've been wholesaling to guys like us at a much bigger premium that you can sell to a retail customer, obviously. And now all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, you know what, some of these Rolexes are going to start trading under list. And they will be. Which ones? I'll tell you which ones. The ones that, with the hype of the other sports models, like the Pepsi GMTs, like the Batmans, right? Like the red rating Sea Dwellers and all those things. Guess what? Regular Datejust 2s were selling at retail slightly above, right? They creeped up there. Submariners did the same thing, right? Submariners have never traded over list. All of a sudden, they started trading over list. Plain Jane Submariners, even with no date ones, right? Those are the ones you're going to see come back down because, again, everything's kind of coming down to earth, right? Yes, the Batmans, the GMTs, they're still all trading over list, right? But not as much over list as they used to. What does that mean for a Submariner that was trading a little bit over list? Or what does that mean for a Datejust 2 that was trading a little bit over list? They're going to come down to a little bit under list. So if he can today get out there, get payment in full in tough times where there's no revenue coming in for stock that he already has, and hedges risk in case GMTs do go under list, which I don't really see happening, right? But let's say they do. He just locked in a bunch of retail sales at retail price, made 37% on every single one of those watches because that dealer cost is minus 37. And at the same token, brought revenue into the company at the time where it's next to impossible. Like for us right now, we're scrambling to bring revenue into the company to stay afloat. I mean, we can operate at a loss for a while, but at the same token, in order to do so, you still need revenue coming in. You still have to pay your bills. Are customers protected should the company go bust? Probably not. I mean, knowing who this dealer is, I don't see him going bust. But at the same token, I don't know what UK laws are, but in America, if this guy was an American, he went Chapter 11, you'd be out of luck, I'm pretty sure, with your deposit. And do I think they have the stock in hand? There's no way of telling. I would assuming he does have stock in hand, or at least he has an order coming in, or he's anticipating a lot of this stuff coming in. You know, my thought on this is, I get mixed feelings about this for the very reason that if he decides to go bust, it's bad. The fact that he's hedging his risk, so to speak, is, I think positive of that. I think it's pretty smart. If I was an authorized Rolex dealer right now, would I do that? I would probably do it, but in a bit of a different manner. I would literally, if I'm talking to clients and I'd say, well, here's the Rolex, you're paying me for it up front, I'm putting your name on the card, and here it is, and it's in a safe. I would physically try to actually show this to people, like do a Zoom call with my clients or something, say, hey, here's what I got, guys. Who wants this? I need payment in full. As soon as my store opens back up, you can have it, right? But technically, he can't because I don't think he can get into his store. But at the same token, if all he was doing is a virtual meeting, he probably could. Again, I don't know how all that works. So again, mixed emotions and all this. Hopes it sheds a little bit of light into that, Joe. And I'm hoping I will see you in London eventually once all this blows over and I'm able to attend Paul's show. And that maybe I'll do another chat with him. We did a market update with him a couple of weeks back, or a few weeks back. I'd probably wait a couple of more weeks just to see where the market is and sort of maybe do an update to that update, if that makes sense. Here's a good one from Fabian via email. And again, guys, remember, I'm asking you to email my questions to you. It's once again, romansharf@luxurybazaar.com. It's a dedicated email address to my YouTube questions. I have an assistant that helps me with all this stuff as well, just to ensure that it comes through and makes it onto the show. Hi, I'm Fabian from Paris. I never miss your interesting videos. Thank you for giving some light onto the gray market. Thank you for watching. Question is simple. In every industry or economy, when it becomes impossible or very complicated to have access to something, we see the rise of substitutional product. Today, we're all aware of the impossibility for most of us to get on the first market steel professional Rolex, steel Royal Oaks, steel Pateks. First, we can consider, for instance, the impossibility to have steel Patek or Rolex led people to rush to steal APs. And second, now that those three brands are not available, we'll read the rush and steal watches from a new brand. Would it be possible that all these people unable to get these watches will now rush, I don't know, maybe to Vacheron steal overseas or maybe another brand? Or do you consider that those three brands will remain on top and won't be joined by a newcomer? Thanks again for your job on YouTube. Fabian, thank you so much for this question. And the reason this is such a great question is because I'm the one that always screams, guys, there's so many other options out there. I'm the first guy to say there's absolutely nothing wrong with hype. If you want to have the latest and the greatest sneakers, clothing, watches, cars, blah, 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 there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same token, I always urge you guys to do this. Open up the blinders, right? And look at other options out there. And this happens on a daily basis. You're absolutely right. And by the way, Vacheron that you mentioned, they're just as hot. The plain Jane overseas is just as hot and still are hot. Literally, as I'm taping today, a gentleman bought a Vacheron overseas. You know who you are, so shout out to you. Vacheron overseas automatic with the blue dial, the most coveted overseas out there. Guess how much he paid? He paid $19,000, which is retail. Technically, it's $200 over retail. Guess how much money I made on that watch? $0. I've told you guys before this. I pick my battles. You know, if the guy is already paying retail, he's an existing client, he's a YouTube fan, he's already bought a few watches from me where I did make money. I told him that whatever I find it for, I'll pass the savings on to you, and he was happy of picking this watch up at retail, COVID or no COVID, because that's just it. You can't find them out there. Another client of mine, you know who you are. He's actually a client, it's a local client slash friend. He picked up a 15500 with a gray dial from us a few months back, right? Now he called me and asked me for the new 38mm chronograph with the blue subdials, beautiful watch. And he's like, I really want that watch. And I said, listen, I called around. I said, the cheapest I found this thing is $27,000, which is pretty much retail, right? If you paid retail plus tax, it'd be more, but it's pretty much retail. A watch that was $32,000 a couple of months back prior to COVID, but notice they didn't drop below retail. Well, why? The market is not that great right now. I'm like, well, consider this. If this is a watch that you can only buy at the AP boutique, who's buying these watches from AP boutiques at a discount? Nobody. AP boutique doesn't discount. Yes, there are a few select dealers out there that may have gotten this particular watch, right? It's not boutique only for sale, like some of the limited editions. But nevertheless, are they going to go and discount this watch to anybody? Absolutely not. You know, because along with that, they got a few less desirable models that are a bit harder to sell, right? Or more expensive models that are a bit harder to sell. So they're going to try to squeeze every single dollar out of it. And as of 3 months ago, they would have sold it to a guy like me for $30,000, which is $3,000 to $4,000 over list. But to go back to your question, you know, is this going to lead to a rush for watches from a new brand? Absolutely. This happens all the time. It happens within the brand, like I just mentioned with Rolex, and it happens cross brands. A lot of people jump into Omega. A lot of people open up their eyes and saying, wait a minute, I just bought myself a $300,000 Richard Mille and it's a chronograph. There's deals out there on grand complicated watches from big brands that are 10 times more complicated and half the money. Maybe I should open up my horizon. There's those that don't care. They're going to say, I want the latest, the greatest, the hottest. I want to have the best, most impossible, and mostly hyped up watch on the market, regardless of how much it costs. And again, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Vacheron overseas stainless steel models were always popular. They weren't really ever trading over lists like the blue dial. So what did Vacheron do? They put out a plain Jane Vacheron Constantine overseas. This thing that looks like a 5711 or plain Jane Royal Oak automatic, right? They put a beautiful blue dial in it because that's what saying. Guess what? 5 years from now, it's going to be a red dial that's going to have the same effect as the blue dial. They're going to start making red dials. If it's going to be a green dial, they're going to start making green dials. Even though Vacheron is the oldest running watch company out there with plenty of history, considered part of the Holy Trinity, that doesn't mean they don't follow suit of what the hot trends on the market are. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. Hope this sheds a little bit of light into your question. Next one is from a gentleman named Vishal. Dear Roman, first and foremost, no pun intended. I'd like to say that I've watched every single one of your episodes and videos, and I love the content. I certainly appreciate your insights into the watch market. Second, a big shout out to Anna T. She helped me more than once with my purchases, and I must say she certainly knows watches and is extremely polite and helpful. Thanks, Anna. Anna is my sales manager. Some of you guys that have conversated to me via email, I often copy her on these emails to fulfill whatever requests you guys have. Quick story on Anna. I hired Anna as a secretary. It was me and Arthur. At the time, we opened up our first office going back many years. We needed someone in the office to help us out with pretty much everything, right? It was just the two of us. And my wife's best friend said, hey, I have a cousin named Anna. My wife is also named Anna. She's looking for a job. She just finished college. I'm like, well, she's overqualified. I'm not looking. I'm looking for a girl to pick up the phones and like help around the office. She's like, just hire her. I'm like, why? She's like, just hire her. Lo and behold, fast forward, 15 years now. Anna is my sales manager. She's gone a long way from obviously answering phones, although she still doesn't shy away from doing that. Oftentimes when you call the office, she will pick up the phone, regardless if, let's say, my secretary is busy, especially now that my secretary is at home. Anna is my go-to. She's been with me for so many years, and she is just as knowledgeable in watches as I am. I've been asking her to come on some of the episodes with me. She's the quiet, shy type, but she has just as much knowledge in watches, sometimes in certain areas even more than me, just because she's been doing it for just about as long as I have. She really knows her shit, let's just say that. This is my first time asking questions for your channel, so I have 3 questions. Number 1, as you have traveled to various watch shows, notice that you make a lot of pickups in certain episodes. Adrienne also is a buyer of a lot of watches. When I look at luxurybazaar.com, you certainly have a lot of watches. My impression is that there would be no possible way that you and your partners or team, when travel with you, could buy all the watches during those trade shows. The question is, what percent of watches are bought behind the scenes versus the pickups that you and your team partners make at these trade shows? More than we do at trade shows. Our biggest concern at trade shows is to sell, not to buy. So we sell a lot more than we buy. Majority of these watches, oftentimes clients call me and say, tell me about this watch. They're like, well, I sold this watch to my client. You would be surprised the amount of watches that come back our way from existing clients, number 1. Number 2, a gazillion dealers offer us stuff day in, day out. It starts from the manufacturer level, down to the dealer level, distributor level, and down to the private client. And this is where majority of our watches come in, because we are buyers. Anybody who's anybody in this business will tell you the same thing. Buying is where you make the money, not the selling, right? A bigger percentage comes from outside of the trade shows. Number 2, we all know the difficulty of buying a Rolex stainless steel models from AD. Hence, over the past couple of months, I've bought a couple of models, including the Sky Dweller, Sea Dweller, GMT Root Beer. You've always stated that one should buy what they like first and foremost, and that's what I have done. All these pickups were never meant to watches I bought because I had to settle for less, rather because I've become to love the look and feel of these watches, and that's awesome. With that said, what are your thoughts on GMT to CH and R model in general? My understanding is that all of the two-tone models, this one actually is harder to get. Is that true? So you're talking about the two-tone root beer, right? Ian, if you can pop that up on the screen. To say that it's harder to get the others, yes, because again, what I discussed in the previous couple of questions, you know, when certain models take the way and lead the way, everything else follows suit. So if you have a GMT that's hot in stainless steel, right, whether it's a Batman or a Pepsi, then the root beer, the gold model, is going to be hot, and the two-tone is going to be hard. But to say that makes it a little bit harder to get than others, but not by much. Hope that answers your question. My final question, consider that Rolex will be closed initially for 1 to 2 weeks due to COVID-19. This may hamper the manufacturers of these watches as well. Let's say an estimate, Rolex makes 800,000 watches per year. That would be about 2,200 watches a day. If they decide for, say, 14 days, that would be a loss of 30,000 watches that would have otherwise been manufactured. Obviously, we don't know what these watches are staggered in the manufacturing cycle, but this is quite a bit of lost productivity, even for a $4 billion plus company. Would you say that select models, even the two-tones, would become even much more harder to obtain? Yes and no. It depends on what Rolex decides to do. Again, anybody that tells you anything, that they know anything about production numbers and production in general, they're lying to you. All right, it's all hearsay. If I was Rolex, what I would do is I would do exactly that. Well, obviously, at this, you asked this question a while ago. At this point, we know they're going to be closed for a lot more than 14 days, right? In my opinion, I wouldn't try to catch up. Knowing how hot Rolex is on the market today, I would literally lose that entire production cycle, start from the beginning of the next production cycle, therefore not polluting the market. Because you have to remember, the biggest fear, every big dealer, especially wholesale dealer strictly, I spoke to one the other day, and his biggest fear, and mine as well, because remember I do a lot of wholesale, is the private sector having to sell their watches back into the market because perhaps they bought it in good times, and right now something has changed for them financially in their own business, in their own job, etc., where they have to sell something, or just choose to sell off that expensive toy now because the income is not what it used to be, for example. And that's where I would love to have companies like Rolex, like Patek, like Audemars Piguet counter that with a much smaller production over the next, let's say, year's time. If that happens, I think that will help out the market tremendously. But at the same token, we don't know whether or not Rolex is happy about the fact that you got customers out there complaining they can't get their hands on a stainless steel Rolex watch because now it's all trading B2B and it's never making onto customers' lists. Waiting list my ass. Majority of these authorized dealers are wholesaling this stuff to us because they can get a much, much, much bigger profit on it. And again, I don't blame them for doing so. Because go try to sell a $70,000 Rolex Pearl Master that you receive alongside with 5 Batmans. You know what I mean? If that happens, this stuff could stay just as hard to obtain. But again, you guys have to keep in mind is you have these flows of merchandise, right? You have the manufacturer putting the stuff out. You have the dealers that held the stock for the highest price possible, right? You have certain dealers that are going to start dumping the stuff because they have to, because they can't afford to hold on to it, and the prices have calmed down, and they don't want to take a bigger loss. And at the same token, you have the private sector that's going to be selling back to guys like us. That's a big influx of merchandise into one. That's why I said I wish that manufacturers would literally forgo whatever production they lost and not produce it. But at the same token, they're locked into orders. Dealers order way ahead of time. So in their mind, it's like, okay, well, I don't really care if the market pollutes and if in the secondary market the prices go down, especially the Rolex. They don't care. They've been number one. They will be number one regardless of whether their watch is discounted or not, because at the end of the day, they sell at 37 off to a dealer. And if they have $1 billion worth of orders that were pre-ordered already assigned to all these dealers, they might as well go and fill those orders because they will still make their margins. What those dealers are going to do with those watches going forward, only time will show. And I hope this sheds a little bit of light into the 3 questions that you asked for, Charlotte. I appreciate it. I appreciate the purchases you've made for us in the past, and I'm glad you asked me a few questions that I could address. Guys, I think at this point, with all the elephants I was addressing, I'm going to have to cut off these questions. Other than that, you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber, and most importantly, hit that share button because this is what helps my channel grow. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.